Mike Migliori with Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine, the talking machine. We're going to start off, as usual, with What's on Your Mind. Al, what's on your mind?
What's on my mind is two gentlemen that are professional announcers asked me to show up at the Three Lakes Country Club golf course out there in Penn Hills for the Golden Glove boxing matches. I hadn't seen a boxing match in probably about 15 years, and it was great to see my fellow co-hosts up here controlling a show, and we had a guy who was a guest on our show, Andy Sebastian. Just to see the professional performance he does as an announcer was so impressive. Plus, he kept mentioning my name, so that sure helps a lot. So, Andy, thanks a lot. I do appreciate that. But then Smoking Jim and Magic Mike were down there announcing, and Mike got a little tired in about the 9th or 10th bout, and he asked me to come down and see if the talking machine could talk a little bit. So I'm sure Smoking Jim's editing that right now as we speak. So, but I appreciate that. And I wasn't able to be the color announcer because my friend to the right here already took that position. And Mike was wondering why he couldn't be the color announcer. But we had that covered. And we'll get into some of the other sports topics. But I would like to, again, promote Glenn Anderson with MSASports.net. They're still the positive athletes. Keep going out there and get your positive athletes in there. Help these kids out that have done a great job through the schools and everything else. So get your vote in there. You only got another week or so to do it, and then I'll stop talking about it, and we'll start next season. So that's what's on my mind.
Thanks, Al. Jim, we know you got a lot on your mind.
Hey, thanks, Magic Mike. And, you know, it's another edition of First and 10 with Smoking Jim. And I tell you what, me and the talking machine's on the same page. You know, with First and 10 with Smoking Jim in the locker room, we've been going all over the country and in last couple of decades. But this one takes us back just 1 week, and I got to piggyback on what Al says. I tell you what, it was amazing weekend last weekend to be with my colleagues, promoting Golden Gloves boxing, building future champions. And I tell you what, these guys are really celebrities. I didn't know how big celebrities that I was working with until I got there. And the first time the announcer mentioned Al Levine and all his accomplishments, I started looking around to see who they was talking about. I said, that's my main man up there. And I tell you what, Magic Mike Migliori, nobody knows boxing like this guy. We had a great time, you know, side by side. And a lot of people don't know that, you know, Mike wears a lot of different hats. He's putting together a great movie, casting for the movie. So we have beautiful girls coming up trying to audition right on site with Magic Mike to be in his next movie. And I tell you what, last but not least, we had the beautiful Erin Ward. You know, she was a videographer, did a great job. You know, we've been doing this since 2007, and she did the best job on the camera that we ever had, and she's the most beautiful camera person we ever had. So thanks again. Next week in First and 10 with Smoking Jim, we're going to talk NFL draft, things that happened over the years with the NFL draft. Should be real interesting. Thanks, Magic.
No problem, Jim. Thank you. Chip, what's on your mind?
Good evening, everybody. We're right on the cusp of the baseball season this year. You know, the Pirates play the Phillies on Thursday, and at the start of the baseball season every year, it just does something. You know, you get the break in the weather past the winter doldrums, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the next 6 months plays out with the Pirates. I've gone out on a limb, and I said this is the year that the streak ends, and you know, there's a lot of questions that remain to be answered with the you know, 2012 Pittsburgh Pirates, and I'm going to be interested to see how this goes day to day. Looking forward to this year's baseball season, and I'm also really looking forward to watching the Pirates get back on a winning track. That's what's on my mind, Mike.
Well, thanks, Chip. I'm sure we'll get into the Pirates a little bit later on. Well, what's on my mind is probably the same thing that's on every Penguins fan's mind today. Mike Milbury. Mike Milbury is a national announcer. He's not the Flyers announcer or the Penguins announcer. He's a national announcer, which means he should probably try to stay a little bit neutral. Everybody knows that he said that Dan Balsamo wears a skirt, that Sidney Crosby's a punk, and he's been, complaining about his 35th concussion, and all the things that Milbury said. Mike Milbury's hated the Penguins since like 1991 when they knocked him out of the playoffs when he was the head coach for Boston, and then again the following year when they knocked him out of the playoffs. And he works alongside Eddie Olczyk, who also hates the Penguins because they fired him for being like a garbage coach. He should praise Mario Lemieux every day for giving him an opportunity to try. But Mike Milbury, he said all these things, something that maybe you don't know or maybe you do, but on December 9th, Mike Milbury was coaching his son's hockey team, and he grabbed a player from the other team, and he roughed him up, he shook him up, threatened him physically, threatened to hurt him, to kill him, threw him to the ground. And Milbury, when he was a player, he was pretty much a goon, so you expect him to do stuff like that, but usually not with a 12-year-old kid, Mike. That's not quite manly, I don't think. Even I wouldn't beat up a 12-year-old kid, 15 maybe. But, what are you thinking about? You're calling somebody else a punk and you beat up on 12-year-old kids? You should be in jail, you bum. So anyway, when you get down there, and if you should be lucky enough to get Penguins tickets, and you're able to down there in the first round when they're playing the Flyers, and Mike Milbury and Pierre Maguire and Eddie Olczyk are calling the game, bring a sign. My personal sign is to say, Mike, come on up here. I'm not 12 years old. Okay? And that's what's on my mind. But I also like to stay in hockey, but go to high school hockey. I'd like to give out a shout out to Bethel Park's Zach Volzer, who's a forward, and Jacob Brown, who's a defenseman, for both being selected for the Post-Gazette's all-area hockey team. Congratulations, guys. Great job. So now we're... since we're on hockey, might as well stay there. The Penguins look like trash these last 6 games. Personally, I think that they're not nearly physical enough. I think that Balsamo is way too impressed with Crosby because he jerked up not only the best line that he had for a few games, but he really ruined the power play by putting Crosby on the boards and moving Malkin back to the point, trying to run 5 forwards. The power play has gone from being one of the best in the league to 2 goals out of the last 35 tries. Dan, start thinking correctly. Okay, first off, Sidney Crosby's not the best player in the league. Jenny Malkin's the best player in the league. Put him back where he was scoring just about every power play. Put Crosby either, if you need to put him on that line, put him on the point or whatever. Personally, I would move him to the second power play unit, let him play alongside Jordan Stahl and Tyler Kennedy. And with either Martin or maybe Niskanen up on the points. Then that way you have 2 really good units you can put out there, one after the other. But you had the best power play in the league. Put it back together and use it.
They got 3 games to get it right. But Mike was talking about this earlier before we went on the air. That if the Penguins don't change the way that they've been playing the last few games, they're not going to make it out of the first round, and they've got a team that's loaded to win the cup. They can't allow themselves to continue the way they've been. And when their season finale against Philadelphia, they can't let themselves be goaded into, doing something foolish and getting players suspended, because they're going to need the people that they have on the team to make it past the Flyers in the first round.
Well, I think that Balsamo was experimenting a little bit because Sid did come back, and it seems like he's in full health. He did take a few hits. Matter of fact, he took that nice cheap shot from Shen that sort of kicked off all of these fireworks and everything like that. And they shouldn't buy into that. So you have a bad game, the coach is changing all your lines up. He should go back to what he did have. I agree with Mike, and they have to do some of those things. Go with what brought you there. The Malkin line has done fantastic. What's wrong with Sid being on the 3rd line? Cook sure loves it, so we might as well get back to him setting his record season and everything else. Might as well start in there with a couple of wins and get back in the playoff mode here because you only have a few games. So now's the time to do it. Hopefully Balsamo takes off his skirt, like they said, and we get a little action in the game and get back to that aggressive style. And, like Orkbeck, he's always the guy that's bringing out some of these things. They do have to play more physical, and he keeps mentioning that, so hopefully that'll sink into him. So
He does keep mentioning it, but he hasn't been doing it.
Right.
None of them have been doing it. Thank God for Joe Vitale. He came back and he's picked the hitting up a little bit. He blasted Danny Briere pretty good. But you know what? It was not a cheap shot. It was a clean hit. It was shoulder to chest. Briere had the puck. That's the way you play hockey. And for Laviolette to get on carrying on because Ballsma put out Adams and Vitale and Asham and thinking that was a big deal. The reason that he put those guys out there is because the Flyers were headhunting for Crosby and Malkin. Why do you put your star players out on the ice for the last minute of, the meaningless last minute of a game? You put the guys out there that, that they're not going to be headhunting for, not going to be banging around. And it just happened to be that they were, three of the toughest players on the Penguins team. And the Flyers got a little bit out of line, and those three guys beat them up.
I think he got upset because he screwed up. He didn't know who he had on the ice. There's no way you put your top players on the ice. That's what Laviolette did. So he got caught doing a stupid move, and it cost him dearly. Briere jumped off the ice so quickly and ran to the bench. It was comical. I watched that. It was hilarious. And then for him to snap out, that showed me he's guilty of whatever he was trying to do. The fourth line, it's just the fourth line with the Penguins. If that's our goon line, I'd hate to see, another team with their goon line. We'd be in trouble. So that's just nonsense with this type of stuff.
Now, there is a chance that the Penguins are going to play in the early rounds, maybe in the first round, Philadelphia in the playoffs. You guys are fearful about that because they haven't been able to beat Philadelphia?
No, I'm not fearful. Here's what. If you're afraid to play a team and you think you're the best, you're not the best. I don't care what sport it is.
Back at camera.
So, that's part of what you shouldn't worry about.
Terrible. What's
going on with these other teams. I welcome a challenge. In 2009, they started with Philadelphia and they won a cup. So come on now. This is all the media out there. They present something that's so negative. Let's go with something positive. These guys are winners. Let's go out and get the cup. Simple as that.
Yeah, talent-wise, there's no way that the Penguins should lose. Philadelphia kind of, handed it to them on Sunday, and that should have been a wake-up call for them. I think the best way to handle a team that was playing the way Philly played, in the third period, is to just go out there and sweep them in the first round. But they definitely can't play the way they've been doing it, and expect that to happen.
No, I don't think there's any reason to be fearful of the Flyers. The Penguins have a much more talented team, and when they play physical, they have a much more physical team. It's just that they've gotten away from that. Who knows why? But when the Penguins are out there and they get physical, they can play with anybody. The last time that the Penguins played Boston, their game plan was to hit Zdeno Chara every chance they could. Zdeno Chara is almost 7 foot tall. He's the biggest player in hockey. And they went out there and they blasted him. Even Tyler Kennedy, who might be the smallest player in hockey, banged him every chance that they got, and they beat Boston pretty handily. They're going to play Boston here, sometime in the next 15 minutes. A game will start, I guess. And if they get out there and if they do that, then they'll beat Boston. And if they get physical with the Rangers, they'll beat them. And on Saturday, the last game of the season, they need to get out there and they don't have to start fights or whatever, but they need to bang the Flyers around and send them a message and tell them this is the way it's going to be. Well, when you play us, we're going to pound you and we're going to be physical, and that's how they need to beat these teams. Because they have the best players in the league, they try to finesse everybody. And while sometimes that's nice, if the other team's trying to finesse you too, that might work. Like against Winnipeg. Winnipeg likes to try to skate with the Penguins, and they give up 8 goals every time they play us. But the other teams, like the New York Islanders, who are like just an absolutely garbage team. Oh, yeah. In fact, they're an absolutely garbage organization. We'll get to that in a minute. But they pushed the Penguins around for 2 games. Mm-hmm. They pushed them off the ice for 2 games, and the Penguins lost 2 games to the worst team in the league. They should have never lost either one of those games, and they should be contending for the President's Cup right now and not trying to stay in 4th place to get a home ice advantage against the Flyers.
Well, actually, the home ice isn't really that effective for Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. Look at Philadelphia has 5 wins in a row. They're undefeated in our home court here at Consol Energy. And the same with us. We win our fair share out there in Philadelphia now. So maybe it would be all right if we go on the road So who knows? We'll have to see what happens here.
Well, I mentioned the New York Islanders, who's like, they've had some great players in the past, but over the last, I don't know, 30 years, the best player they had was Pat LaFontaine. They have not only have they not retired his number, but they pretty much erased them from their records almost. Pat LaFontaine rode a bike, was in a bike ride with another player from the team, a guy named Webb, for charity, and they did a big press release and they talked all about Webb, never mentioned LaFontaine one time. The reason for that is that they had a head coach, Neil Smith, and he hired LaFontaine as part of his coaching staff. And when they fired Smith, LaFontaine left too. The guy that hired him was leaving, so he felt like out of loyalty he was going to go too. And the organization just pretty much blacklisted one of their better players, all time. And to me, that's just absolutely classless. But being from New York, you can see
you have
that's not that big a deal to be classless. It's pretty common, but still, it's just totally classless. That would be like the Pirates decide, Roberto Clemente, we're going to go ahead and take his number down off the wall, and we're going to go ahead and ignore the fact that he ever played for us.
Wow. Don't even say that.
Like they did Barry Bonds.
Who? Speaking of Pirates, Chip.
Nice.
Chip, what are you thinking about the Pirates here? I don't see much change here coming north, buddy.
Well,
I'm a little nervous about collecting my winning early.
Baseball's a long season. 162
Okay.
games is a long time, and they've got some time. There's a lot of questions that remain to be answered
Yes.
with this, and we're going to have to see what they put on the field this year. Because all the press releases and all the talking in spring training, it doesn't mean anything at all. The slate's been wiped clean now, and and everybody's got a chance, and we'll see what happens.
Except, what happened to Pedro? Is he doing better now? Is he getting
well,
a couple hits? I heard he had a couple hits, but
he still hadn't batted his weight in spring training.
what's his weight? 180? 150? He doesn't look that thin on TV.
Yeah.
I know TV adds to us. We're all skinny guys, according to Jeff.
No, but
I'm just teasing.
but Pedro Alvarez really has to step up, and they need to find out this year if he can play or not. And I think really the only way to do that is to get him on the field and tell him, look, you're my third baseman, and and play him, and to find out can he play at the major league level, and more importantly, can he hit at the major league level? Because he certainly hasn't been doing that for the last year, and the only way to correct that is to get him in there and play him every day.
Well, I don't think he's going to last that long in the majors playing every day. Like I said last week, put him back in the minors. Let him start hitting again. You have a guy like Haig that come up here and look at, he's tearing him up. Of course, he might be a spring training wonder here. You have that happen. But I don't think Pedro has it right now. His head isn't right with the hitting and everything else. So I don't care what kind of shape he's in. I still think he should be in the minor leagues to start with.
I personally would not send him down. I'd leave him at third base, let him play, try to play it out. The Pirates aren't losing anything, whether he hits or not. They're not going to, they might not lose 100 games this year, but they might. They're not going to have a winning season. But I would let the guy play. Let's see what he can do. As far as Hitman Haig, boy, I hope they don't send him down to the minors, because when they send him down there and they start playing around with his batting mechanics, then he'll go the way of Alvarez too. They should let this guy just continue to hit the way he does. He's hitting the ball. He looks pretty good as far as spring training goes. Maybe give him a chance at first base. I don't know, but I would definitely keep him in the lineup and get an idea of what he can do. Well, Chip, they're your babies. What do you think of Haig?
Well, you know what? He's been impressive so far, and I think they got to keep him, and if he's got a chance to play, platoon him, and see how he develops. I certainly think that he's got the talent. And maybe he's hitting the way he's hitting now because the pitchers aren't used to him. Nobody's seen him bat before, so they don't know what his strengths and weaknesses are. And that usually comes out in the wash after a couple of times through seeing everybody. But the season will play out, and we will find out. The big concern, I think, with the Pirates is going to be the starting rotation, and I think some of the things that make me more intrigued about the starting rotation. You got a pitcher like Jeff Karstens, who last year did a very good job for probably half the season as a starting pitcher, but he went into the season last year not as a starting pitcher. And this year going into spring training, he's prepared himself to be a starting pitcher. And when he's on, he can be amazing. I watched him pitch a game against the Astros last year, and he threw an 83-pitch shutout, and I think the game was less than 2 hours long. And I was watching the game on TV, and I just couldn't believe his control was unbelievable. And if he could do that on a more consistent basis, he could be a decent starter.
Was that in the first 100 games, Chip?
Absolutely.
Okay, well that's part of the thing. I heard the coach talking about Searcy was saying that even though they were in shape last year, they're training to be able to play a full season. So that makes me wonder about last year and the whole ethic and work ethic and this losing culture that's here at Pittsburgh. So I hope you're right, and we do get a little bit of a change, but I'm not really seeing it yet, and it doesn't look like they really changed a whole lot.
Well, that being said, you won't see that until you play the season. You got to play the games before you can see really any change, and time will tell.
Well, I'd like to see the Pirates do well as much as anybody. I don't expect it this year. They really haven't made that much of a change. They brought in maybe a couple of pitchers, which might be worth like 4, 5, 6 more wins. But they, if they continue to try to improve, that's and spend a little bit of money and maybe bring in a couple of players, that might help. But it looks like the Pirates are going to have to develop from within because not too many players at this time are really all that excited about coming here. I think that they have to give this Hague guy a chance. They have to give Alvarez a chance. They have to let them play and see what happens. Running them back and forth to Altoona or wherever, that's not going to help them out. They need to let them play and see what they have. I don't know. I don't know what the problem with the Pirates organization is, but they seem to ruin their pitchers. Now, last season they started out and the pitching carried the team. The reason they were at first place in the middle of the season is because the pitching carried them all the way to the point where just the bats weren't performing anymore. And eventually that pitching, they were pitching way over their heads, and eventually that kind of evened out, and they went downhill from there. So I think like they've got Stetson Alley and Tylon in the I guess the minors, and those are two guys that are supposedly pretty good pitchers. As long as they don't ruin their arms and end up with the Tommy John surgery that seems to happen to every Pirates pitcher. These guys might be able to come up and make an impact. I know it sounds funny, but it's true. I mean, every Pirate pitcher that I've ever seen in the last 15 years ends up with elbow surgery before they get out of the minors. I don't know if that happens with every team. Maybe it does. You just don't hear about it from the other teams, but you hear about it here. I mean, pitching is not it's not a natural motion. I'm sure it does mess up your arms, your elbows, your shoulders. But anyway, I mean, good luck to them. I hope that they do well. Opening day is Thursday, and a company called Faded Industry is going to be hosting a tailgate party in the parking lot down at the stadium. So if you're going to be down that way, check them out. You got a pretty good event going on there, and should be a lot of fun, a lot of good-looking girls, and a lot of good drinks and stuff. So if you get a chance, check out Faded Industries tailgate party.
Sounds good. Hey, can we switch a little bit up to football and RG3 for a second or two?
No.
Just
yeah, go ahead. Who? RG3, Washington Redskins.
But before we go to football, all I got to say is one and done is so much fun. Congratulations to the University of Kentucky. I think we all had them going all the way. But I tell you what, I want to send out a congratulations to the CBI champions of the world, national championship, University of Pittsburgh. They finally got their second national championship in 1976. They won a national championship in football. I want to also send a shout out to the NIT national champions, Stanford. Pre-game speech was done in the locker room by the greatest NFL player of all time, Ray Lewis. He inspired Stanford to go on out there and win that NIT. And I think now the BCS ought to step in, because who's to say Kentucky is the true national champion when you got Stanford winning the NIT, which is a national championship, and Pitt, the CBI national champions. I think the BCS ought to step in and have those teams play in a little tournament to see who's the true best team in college
What do you think, a
basketball.
two-loss elimination?
That's the three. Yeah.
Nobody can beat Pitt
You know,
2 out of 3.
At one time, the NIT was
Yes,
the
it was.
tournament.
Yes, it
You know,
was.
it was the premier basketball tournament. For college basketball, and the NCAA has eventually surpassed that. But I heard something interesting. Read something interesting last week where they were thinking that. If the University of Kentucky were to play the Washington Wizards, that they would beat them, and I just found that I bet you they would.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But and while we're on the college basketball thing, tonight is the women's national champion. Baylor is going to complete the season undefeated and become national champions. They'll be playing Notre Dame Irish, and I did a poll for the women's basketball tournament, and I actually picked all 4 teams that made it to the Final Four.
The prophet coming again.
And the final matchup that I had picked was I had picked UConn against Baylor, and with Baylor beating UConn, and UConn lost in overtime to Notre Dame the other night. And I watched the games on Sunday night, and it was very entertaining basketball, but championships being played later on this evening, and it'll be interesting to see. But if you get a chance to do that, it's not too often that you get to see a team win a championship undefeated. It's it'll be worth watching.
You watched the women's game over the WWE? You
Hold
didn't do
it
the
a second.
pay-per-view?
Hold it a second.
Yeah, I didn't have to pay $70 to watch it.
I'll tell you what, Baylor has a chance to be the first and only women's basketball team never finish with 40 wins, so they'll get it done now. And if they don't get it done this year, we know when Destiny Brown comes to town to Waco, Texas next year, they'll get it done again.
But first, Chip, as far as the Washington Wizards, Kentucky would beat them like they own them. And if you put this Kentucky team against the Miami Heat, not only will they beat the Miami Heat, but Calipari will get LeBron James to play for them next year.
I can see Kentucky.
More than he's making now.
I can see Kentucky beating Miami because LeBron's going to disappear in the second half.
Not this year.
He's not going
I'm
to show up in
predicting
the
they
next
win.
last 10
I'm
minutes.
predicting the Heat's a winner like I did in January.
Not this year. I
think the Heat
I think
does.
Derrick Rose is the best player in basketball. I think Chicago Bulls.
I
win it
think
all this
Chicago and the Oklahoma City Thunder are 2 teams that are going to end up vying for the championship.
Wow.
year. I like Chicago a lot this year.
Oklahoma City's, with Westbrook and Durant, they are going to have got a great 1-2 punch.
Yes, they do.
That's true. But back to Kentucky. Said this last week. I haven't been watching basketball as long as the other sports that I follow, but Kentucky right now I believe is the best college basketball team that I have ever seen play. I mean, obviously there's been great basketball teams before that, but I think right now they are the best college basketball team that I've ever watched play.
Well, I was also reading something this past week, and they were talking about the top 5 college basketball teams of all time, and they went into the UCLA teams that won 7 straight championships. But I think and what I found was ironic is that Indiana, 1976, had an undefeated team, and how do you not consider them in the conversation for being the best ever? You don't get any better than being undefeated. And it's not something that happens very often, and I don't think in our lifetimes that we're going to see another college basketball team, men's at least, finish the season undefeated.
And it's amazing that you said that because Calipari, and a shout out to, he's from Moon Township, and they haven't never won anything out there, so congratulations to Calipari. But that's the first thing that he said. He said his next goal is to have an undefeated season, so so it looks like he's going to have about 5 or 6 first-round draft choices off of this group right now, and I don't know the last time they went to class.
Do you think it's just his players that carry the day, or is it some of his coaching too?
Well, you got to look back. I don't think that anybody's ever won before or after at the University of Massachusetts. And when he coached at UMass, the guy's just an outstanding recruiter. He could win anywhere. He could win at Robert Morris. He could win at Lehigh, because the guy can absolutely recruit. This guy has charisma. There's some people like me and Chip talked about before, me and Magic Mike always talks about, there's some people that's fitted for the level that they're at. You know, you got sometimes these college coaches who are great college coaches try to jump into the professional ranks and get killed, like a Lou Holtz or Steve Spurrier. But Calipari is a guy that can walk into your living room, eat your mama's sweet potato pie or pumpkin pie, and come away, and the kid is going to go to that school because he recruits the parents, he recruits the community, he recruits the high school coaches. When he went to UMass, he took a kid from Alderdice High School, Willie Herndon, who ended up being an All-American, and he took those guys almost all the way to the top. Memphis, the same thing. So it's Calipari, and now he's in a situation where Kentucky, and this is a guy that can recruit all the great players in college basketball. He can bring them in one and done, and I think they can do it almost every year.
Well, I heard some theories that maybe he'll try the pros again because he didn't do very well, and some of his young players might be on, a couple of them on a team or so, and maybe he'll try to take a shot there.
I don't remember him in the pros. Was he in the NBA?
I think he was.
I know Rick Pitino was in the NBA.
I think he was for a short period of time.
But the difference between coaching in the pros and coaching in college, in college, you're the undisputed leader of that team. What you say goes. In the pros, the players are making more than the coaches, and you really, it's hard to motivate somebody when, they've got, $15, $20 million. They tell you to, you need to run wind sprints, and like, okay, right, I'm going to do that.
Just ask the New York Knicks. You're right, exactly right. They got rid of their coach, and right after Carmelo Anthony came back.
It's not unusual in pro sports, and especially in the NBA, for players to get rid of coaches. That's happened a lot.
And
there are players for like Isaiah Thomas, for an example, that not only got rid of the coaches, but he would be getting rid of other players that he didn't like off the team when he played for Detroit. Sure. He was pretty good at that stuff. So yeah, when you go from college to the pros, when you're in college, those kids are listening to you because they want to get to the pros. When they're already in the pros and they got that $20 million contract, $1 million contract, they might not be all that interested in what you have to say anymore. That's why there are certain coaches that do well in the NBA, but there are a lot that don't. The coaches, they come to mind. Phil Jackson, he's, no matter where he went, he's been successful because, well, who knows why? Usually because he goes to teams that they're already loaded, but he's able to keep those guys together and get them to play, where other coaches may not be able to do that. Probably not everybody can coach Michael Jordan. Not everybody can coach Kobe Bryant. You have to have guys that, like right now, the Lakers, they're still a good team, a great team, but they're not nearly as good as they were when Jackson was the coach there, because they have too much internal garbage going on right now. Whereas, when Jackson was there, for whatever reason, they might have felt it, but they weren't saying it in the press and stuff like that.
He got them focused, and he had them playing as a team. In the Lakers, I think the big difference is the quality of play that the Lakers have this year is the difference in the coaches. Phil Jackson is probably, other than Red Auerbach's, probably one of the greatest coaches in professional basketball ever. Where am I going? I don't know.
The greatest thing that Phil Jackson did when he was with the Lakers was marry the owner's daughter. So he let the players know, I ain't going nowhere. I done married into the family, the whole bit. But we talk about Kentucky. Kentucky's losing. All their starting players is going to the NBA. Do you think Calipari beats down the door to T.J. McConnell now, or do you think T.J. McConnell goes to Kansas? Where is he going? Where is he going to end up?
What happened with that story?
He said he wants to play at a higher level.
What happened at Duquesne? They recruited him from 4th or 5th grade.
Well, a higher level from Duquesne might be Robert Morris. They beat him this year.
Good point.
Robert Morris is a pretty good basketball organization. They do pretty well. We had Marty Gallosi on earlier and talked a little bit about that. They have a pretty good organization there, pretty good program as far as basketball goes. Let's go ahead and let you talk about RG3. Since put out what you wanted to say there.
Donovan McNabb said that the Shanahans will ruin
I'm sure there's a Babe Ruth connection
if he comes
somewhere.
to Washington.
Pardon me, Chip?
I said Donovan McNabb says that the Shanahans will ruin RG3 if he goes to Washington.
He's just crying sour grapes. Think about it. Come on now. He had his day in the sun.
Who has Shanahan ever developed as a quality quarterback? I mean, he
Was
grandfathered
John
in
something or another over in Denver. John,
that was grandfathered in. That was grandfathered in. Elway was already in his prime when he took over that.
Yeah, but he didn't win those last 2 years when he got Super Bowls. But I think this is interesting with the Colts taking a look, and they asked for a private workout, and RG3 said no. So I thought that was pretty interesting there.
The Colts asked?
Yeah.
Wow.
They asked, I was picking up a little sports while you were out doing work, buddy.
Oh, RG3 getting a little uppity.
You know what? That's a good move on his part because everybody knows that they're gonna draft Luck. If they're bringing RG3 in for a look, it's just for publicity.
Right.
Why play that game with him?
But really, is Andrew Luck that much better of a quarterback than RG3?
Absolutely not. I think Andrew Luck should be a bust as an NFL quarterback.
Everybody's anointed him as the #1 draft pick, but I don't really know that he's the best. The best choice for it. I can't wait to see what happens on draft day. Unless of course they, the Colts sign him before the draft and take any of the suspense out of it.
And it's a shame that none of those quarterbacks can go to Ryan Leaf's quarterback camp because he's in jail right now for stealing.
Oh, he got arrested twice over the weekend. He got arrested Friday and he got arrested again on Monday, just to prove that the first time wasn't a fluke.
Sometimes you have to do that.
You know what? If that's true, it's the first time in his career that he's been consistent.
Is that considered 2 completions in a row? He completed something 2 times in a row, so that's a bonus.
But he says when the truth comes out, he will be exonerated. So, okay, he breaks into friends' houses and steals Oxycontin. Okay, I guess it was a misunderstanding.
And I tell you what, as we talk football, and as an NFL scout, I pride myself over the years of going to different spring games. Like Penn State, it's almost impossible. It's like a zoo during regular season, and they still get 85,000 to the spring game. West Virginia packs the house, and I'm going to have to fight my way in the Pittsburgh game at North Hills High School Stadium.
How many people do you estimate you have to pass? 3.
They want to be a big-time program, and they're playing their spring game, which is a big-time event at a high school stadium, and it's not even Gateway High School.
What was Heinz Field occupied?
Yeah.
Might be busy. They're resodding it, I think, Chip. A little resodding.
I'm just saying.
Well, we know one person that'll probably be at the Pittsburgh game recruiting and scouting is a good friend of the show, and he was at the boxing match, the Pittsburgh Power, although they mentioned he was the Pittsburgh Passion coach, Chris Siegfried, and he was in attendance Saturday. We got a chance to interview him, so maybe Pitt should play their game at the Console Energy Center and play their spring game.
Field.
Yeah, they play their spring game like a arena football game, and maybe Sincere will have a little quicker release. Those guys in arena ball get the ball away quicker. That's would really help Kurt Warner out.
Those are some good tips, Jeff. I hope they're not listening to the show. I don't think you were serious about that.
Well, and I haven't checked the the Powers schedule, but wouldn't it be fun to watch the Allen Wranglers come into town with their superstar wide receiver Terrell Owens?
Ooh,
Yeah.
that'd be nice.
He's reached the plateau now where he doesn't need the NFL anymore. He's going back to the Arena Football League, where he can make his hundreds of dollars per game because he spent all his millions from his football career and he's broke.
Well, just so he doesn't get fired off of the team like the Power did, right? Didn't they fire all their players?
They sure did.
So I'd like to hear that story on what the season looks like for them.
I'm
got any
surprised you
insights?
talked to Siegfried. I'm surprised you
Well, it
didn't
wasn't
ask
him.
I'm
It
surprised
wasn't
you didn't
him.
ask
It's the owner. I wasn't putting it on the poor coach. He's a middleman. He's like us.
He probably knows the story, though.
Yeah.
Wasn't Lynn Swan
Yeah,
one
Lynn
of the
Swan's
owners?
the owner.
Okay.
Yeah, Lynn Swan is, and Lynn Swan is an owner, and he is a Republican as well.
Future governor of the state, maybe.
Yeah, he came real
Senator.
close. Yeah, came real close this last election.
Well, we talked a lot. We bounced around the boxing matches a little bit. We mentioned them here and there. Jim, Allen, myself, we did go out to Penn Hills and watch the Golden Glove semifinals. There were a lot of good matches, a lot of good fighters out there. This Saturday, the Golden Glove finals will be held at the Royal Place down on Route 88. Some great local fighters. Kid named Eric Sidnor, outstanding fighter. I'm sure to be a good pro. Monty Eberhardt, another good fighter. And actually, of all the matches that we saw, there were not too many duds. Most of them were very good fights. We saw two heavyweights stand toe to toe and just pound each other to death. They could have tied their feet together because they weren't going anywhere. They just stood right there and banged on each other. So if you got nothing to do on Saturday and if you like the boxing, recommend you go down to the Royal Place and take a look.
And I tell you what, if anybody wants to see the man, the master, my main man, I tell you what, everybody thinks Mike Migliore does a great job on this show, and he does. But he holds back on this show. He's making another appearance in Pittsburgh on a television show, on a reunion show. Believe me, if you get a chance to tap in on the website or watch it, be one of the lucky 300,000 people that watch that show in the city of Pittsburgh. Check out Mike Migliore tomorrow night on Channel 21. It's going to be awesome.
Well, kind of have to hold back on TV because there's a lot of things I'd like to say that I'm not able to. But, there's, I don't know, I mean, I appreciate that, Jim, but, I know we've mentioned this before, but Jim and I have been doing this together for a long time, maybe 7-8 years now. This is our third show together. We've done radio appearances together. A lot of live appearances. We called Explosion Games and Steel Valley Warrior Games, and we've been doing this a long time. There's not a better guy to work with. We've developed a pretty good chemistry, and Chip and Al have pitched in here, and we have a pretty good crew right here. We got a great television crew up here in Bethel Park. These guys behind the scenes are all doing a great job. Well, guys and girls behind the scenes are all doing a great job. And it makes it a lot more fun to do this kind of thing when you have that kind of support.
Well, it's nice being around two professionals because I'm just an amateur, so I respect that. And again, with the people helping us, what Erin Ward did on Saturday night was just unreal. She had all the tapes, moving them in and out, a true professional. I was impressed, and I'm not easily impressed with too many things, just to see what they did. And she did an excellent job, and there were no glitches. I can't wait to see the DVD, even after Smoking Jim edits certain parts. But getting back to Mike and Jim, just how they handle themselves as professionals there with the reports, very insightful. They're picking up things. They invited me down by ringside, first time I was ever by the ringside. It's just a complete different perspective on what you look at and what you can see. Mike was pointing out things before they happen. Smoking Jim was giving me a little analysis on what these fighters would do. We had the blue corner right there, and I could swear that the seconds in the corner were just listening to these two guys because they come out they're saying that they got to take the fight to him. And Mike explained that the scoring counts with the white on the front of the glove that you have to hit. Well, wouldn't you know, this one kid, I forget which fight it is, and I'm sorry for that. Maybe these guys remember. But the kid come out, and he started pounding the gloves left and 1-2 combinations. 1-2-1, I'm hearing in all this. They're saying all these different cosigns and names. Johnny, I don't know who Johnny was, but there was no Johnny in the fight. But this kid's doing some strategy. And then we had some tall kids in the ring. It looked like they were going to hit their head on the beam. So the location was beautiful, picturesque, but it was a little tight quarters for some of the bigger guys. So I'm completely impressed by what these gentlemen do there. And Andy Sebastian, we have to get him back on the show because what a professional he is with just how he called each round, just the little mannerisms. There was a delay in the fight, and you would have never known it. They were throwing information at him, and he kept promoting other things, other businesses, other boxers, Smoking Jim, Mike Migliore. He kept throwing their names around all day long. So it was a very nice thing. I recommend you go down there to the fights on Friday night. It's well worth it.
And sitting that close, Al, you turned into the emperor. You was telling the referees to stop the fight. You was giving them the thumbs down quite a few times. So it was a lot of fun.
So, yeah, that's a lot of back patting here and stuff. But we did.
Well, Mike, you did a good job. I could
Yeah, well, you know, what can I
Except
say?
when you left. Except when you left.
But we did see some very good fighters. Jim, we've been doing this for a while. Which of the fighters that we watched do you think are going to go ahead and do well in the finals and advance to the state finals?
Yeah, I think you're right that a couple of fighters that we've seen. Amani Everhart is a guy that is close to being professional, but this is really not the championships are actually April 14th. This is still a preliminary on April 7th. But if anybody gets a chance, we'll be back out to the City of Champions, Penn Hills, for the championship at the Three Lake Golf Course. If anybody comes out, it's going to be maybe the greatest heavyweights of all time fighting in the championship. 6'7", 250-pound Mike Shook is getting ready to fight a guy who's getting ready to turn pro, has already signed his first professional fight in June. So this is his last couple fights as an amateur. A black kid named Eddie Fast Freddie Latham. Fast Freddie Latham, whose sister's one of the top models here in the city of Pittsburgh, so it's always good to see her at all of his fights. And he's 6'2", about 2 1/4. So come out to see Mike Shook, 6'7", 250, fighting Fast Freddie Latham. That should be a great fight, heavyweight card.
Yeah, I've not seen Shook too many times. I've seen Freddie Latham fight a bunch of times. He came out of the he is trained by Coach Darren Dolby, Coach D they call him. Dolby also trained Tika Hemingway, who we talked about, who will be representing the United States in the Olympics. Dolby's a very good coach, and he brought Freddie Latham when he first started. Tall, skinny kid that really didn't do much of anything, didn't like to get hit. But Coach Dolby taught him a lot, and he's pretty good. And like you said, he's ready to go.
I remember when you used to go down to East Liberty and film their training before the demolition crew leveled the facilities along with the rest of East Liberty.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Tika Hemingway, so I would go just about anywhere that she would go because I knew that she was gonna be a great fighter. And like I said, of all the Pittsburgh fighters I've ever seen, Tika Hemingway, even though she's a female, is probably the best all-around boxer that I've ever seen come out of Pittsburgh. Tika used to train with the guys down there, and they would get like 5 guys. Most of them were like heavier than her or taller than her, and she would spar with them, and they would switch guys round after round, and Tika would be in there, fighting one of them as they would rotate. And the one day that I went down there and I was filming it, they started out with 5 guys and ended with 2 because she knocked 3 of them out.
Wow!
And she put 3 of them down and they quit. And it got to where she was rotating with 2 guys. Tika is just a great fighter. I have no doubt she's going to win the gold medal in the Olympics.
Still the most exciting Pittsburgh fighter I've ever been around, and the best show has always been Paul Spadafore. I tell you what, I don't know what made that guy tick. Always in great shape, always put on a nice show for his fans, and I tell you what, it was electric. And you knew you were at a big-time event when Paul Spadafora fought.
I'll tell you, Paul's a great fighter. You know well, we've had Al McCauley on. I'm a good friend of Al McCauley's and a friend of Paul Spadafora's. He's a great fighter. He is very exciting. But as far as exciting fighters, most exciting fighter in Pittsburgh, actually most exciting fighter I've ever seen anywhere, is Monty Basic Clay.
Yeah.
Monty Clay gets out there, and no matter who he's fighting, he goes out there and he gives you a fight, gives you a great show. Doesn't do a lot of defense. Or maybe if he improved his defense, maybe he would be like the best fighter you've ever seen come out of the city. But he's absolutely willing to take 3 punches to hit you twice. But when he hits you twice, you get hurt and you go away.
I still say for Quan to show Kimbrough could beat Monty Clay.
If Monty Clay fights for Quan, what's his name, Kimbrough, pretty boy, you won't need a referee. You'll need a coroner.
Really? Why is that?
You won't need a timekeeper.
Cyril Weck will come out of retirement for the fight, huh?
What do you guys stage this type of stuff? I've heard this before.
I'm not saying if Kimbrough wins. I'm not saying if he makes it through the. I'm saying if he's not dead at the end of the first round, I'll pay you. Because not only is Monty by far a better fighter and a more powerful fighter, Monty doesn't like him very much.
That's true. That's true.
And Kimbrough ducked him forever.
Roberto Duran didn't like Sugar Ray Leonard, but it still didn't stop the no moss.
What about the first fight? I'm sorry, what? Say it again? Yeah, they talk about no moss a lot, but what about the first fight? But we have a lot of great local amateur fighters, and if you get a chance to go out there and see that, I think it's worth a look.
And there's a lot of pretty girls in the stands.
Yeah, that's true. There turns out to be a lot of pretty girls in the stands.
Well, there's a lot of family and friends there. I wanted to mention a kid, this Logan Atwood, from a little Wick City Boxing, which is out in Newcastle. We were watching this kid, and he was just in great shape, and he just pounded and pounded away. He just knew how to box, and he had said he had been injured. I think Smokin' Jim might have even interviewed him there. And he had 2 ACL injuries, his family was telling me, because they had me sitting in the back bleachers at first. Smokin' Jim and Mike really didn't want to bring me down there right away, so I just mingled, and I do what I do best, so I talked to a few people, and they were very loud. They had another kid here that I marked down, this Ross Harmon. He was the kid that looked like he was just waiting to take his shot. Smokin' Jim kept saying, he's got to hit him. He has him right there. And he must be new to boxing, but he ended up winning the fight. And then we saw a lot of kids from, well, not a lot, but from 70 pounds all the way up to the heavyweight division. And to me, it was so impressive, the heart of these kids. Some of these kids got pounded. Matter of fact, there was a guy, John Zemros, and he's out of IUP Boxing. He was going against this other heavyweight where you could feel the punches. They were so heavy and hard in that fight that it was impressive to see that he outlasted the kid and beat him and won the fight. And the other kid had such a big heart, he was done. That's the one that I was giving the no moss. And I gave the thumbs down because they should have stopped the fight. The kid was fighting on all heart, so that was the guy, Smokin' Jim. So I had to bring that one out for you. But thanks again.
The Golden Gloves, it's a good organization. It's been around for, like, I guess, hundreds of years, 150 years or something like that. But it's they go out of the way to make sure that the boxers are safe, first of all. And it does go through, I mean, from, like Al said, 70 pounds up through the middleweights. But not only is it broken down by weight class, it's broken down by age and by experience class. So that you don't have, a guy that's brand new at it fighting a guy that's been doing it for years. But you get out there and you see, like, you do see all levels. You see kids that are in their first fights, been training for a while, and now they're getting out there to go to their first fight. And guys that have been doing it for years that are soon to go pro, like Freddie Latham and Amani Everhart, who will probably, be having their first pro fights within the next year. It's a great show if you get a chance to go out and do it. Jimmy Savetic, former police officer, runs the Golden Gloves here in Pittsburgh. He's he's very good at putting a show together. He's got Gloria Rutkowski doing it with him, and she's incredible. She does a great job making sure everything's together. It's a good event, and it's a good cause. Keep the kids off the street, keep them out of trouble. It's a good event. So if you get an opportunity, it's worth a look. All right, guys. Well, we've been through almost everything. Like I said, I just told you that the Chicago Bulls are definitely going to win the NBA championship this year. I know you guys are going to follow along with me, but if not, we're willing to listen.
Miami Heat.
No, I imagine when Alan and I were talking earlier, he was saying that the Miami Heat were going to win, and that's the only team that I want to see not win the title. But I honestly think that the Oklahoma City Thunder are actually going to make a serious run for the title. I think they've got a team that can do it, and if they're not the best team in the NBA right now, they're one of the best too.
Jim?
And Chip makes a good point. Of course, my favorite team is the Dallas Mavericks, but I'm going with the Miami Heat. I think LeBron James is a guy that can take over a game all the way up to the finals, and the rest of the team got to pull him through, from then. So I'm going with the Miami Heat this year.
And that was my prediction when we did our predictions for the year, so I can't change. But I did want to bring up, this is the week of the Masters. And we have Tiger Woods, who, again, that's a prediction of mine. And I did predict Kentucky winning, so maybe I'm on a hot streak here. But I think the Tigers due to get another green coat here. And I just got a text that Sidney Crosby scored a goal. It was 4-on-4. So he did get a goal in the game. If you need an update here, since we're almost out of time.
Here's an interesting and useless little piece of information regarding the Masters. The Masters has never allowed a woman to be a member. Okay, and the new CEO of IBM is a woman, and the last 4 CEOs of IBM were offered honorary memberships as members of the Augusta National Golf Course. Now, being that a woman has never been allowed to be a member, and they have precedent set that the CEO of IBM, who only happens to be the biggest sponsor that they have, it'll be interesting to see if she gets invited to become a member, or if they're going to draw a line in the sand and say that women will never be members here. And it'll be funny. It'll be interesting to see if they ever do cross that line. Personally, I think they ought to invite her in. They ought to let her become a member. Why does it have to be boys only?
I think that is such a non-issue. Who cares? I mean,
people do.
Who cares that Augusta National doesn't want women? And if you're a woman, why do you want to be a member of a place that doesn't want you? What sense does that make?
That's where the money and the men are.
They just want to get invited because they want to make a statement or something like that. Who cares? Especially Augusta National.
And don't forget what the original letters of golf stood for. Gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. So I don't see her getting in.
Smoking Jim with the history now. Wow. What a way to end the show here.
I thought Jim knows everything about sports.
Mike, you were right about him.
Except who's going to win.
And he's with me on Miami Heat.
There you go. There you go.
And one more note. We got Tebow going to be on Hard Knocks, it looks like. HBO is going to do another show with the Jets. That will be a perfect high-rated show, one of the highest-rated shows ever. Can you imagine that?
The Jets need to just basically get out of the press and get back to playing football and let their football speak for themselves. Rex Ryan has done nothing but prove that he's a buffoon. He runs his mouth. And you get tired of hearing about him and in the press so much. You got the Giants over on the other side of the town, and all they do is consistently win and occasionally throw in a world championship. The Jets. They were so abysmal last year going into the end of the season that they should stay off of Hard Knocks. They don't belong there. Should put somebody that's a little bit more deserving.
And as we wrap up, I just want to say Mike was the only one on the planet to predict Dallas Mavericks to win it all last year. So listen to Mike, although I think he just picked a team with the most white players.
And my friend owns that team, Mark Cubits. Shout out to Mark.
There you go. Any chance you think he'd like to sponsor the show, Al? Anyway, for Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, Alan Levine, the Talking Machine, and myself, Mike McGleary, we'll see you next week.